In the drought summer of 1889, Clara Whitlock possessed 6 cents, a brass thimble, and enough pride to refuse the blanket Elias Rourke offered her outside the Cheyenne depot. The blanket was thick gray wool, warm enough to survive a Wyoming night. Clara needed it. The station master had locked the waiting room. Wind drove dust across the platform, and she had eaten nothing since morning. Still, she kept both hands around her worn carpet bag. "What do you expect in return?" she asked. "Nothing," Elias replied. Nothing is usually the part men leave unwritten. Elias studied her. He wore a dusty black coat and looked like an ordinary trail-weary rancher. But Clara had heard the ticket agent call him Mr. Rourke. Everyone in Wyoming knew the name. Elias owned the Double R, thousands of cattle, and most of the northern range surrounding Dry Creek Valley. People called him the Cattle King. "You'll freeze before morning," he said. "I have survived worse." He placed the blanket beside her. Clara immediately folded it and returned it to his luggage. Elias glanced from the rejected blanket to the paper label tied around her carpet bag. "Clara Whitlock." She stiffened. "You read my name. I notice things." "So do I." Clara had arrived in Cheyenne expecting employment at a dress shop. The owner had died before Clara's train reached the territory, and the new proprietor offered only unpaid trial work. She refused, though doing so left her without food, lodging, or money for a return ticket. After Elias walked away, Clara found a torn leather glove near the tracks. Working beneath the station lamp, she threaded a heavy needle, slipped her mother's brass thimble onto her finger, and repaired the split palm with waxed thread. When Elias returned, he examined the glove. "That seam will hold," Clara said. "What would you charge for repairing canvas?" "What kind?" 10-ounce duck cloth. Water-stained and badly torn. "By ordinary wear?" "I assumed so. That was not my question." His expression sharpened. Clara had learned heavy stitching while helping her late husband repair freight covers in Nebraska. She understood how canvas stretched, where pressure gathered, and how deliberate cuts differed from natural tears. "I would need to inspect it," she said. "My ranch is 27 miles northwest. I'll pay $1 for the inspection, and return you to Cheyenne if the work does not suit you. With a written contract, stated wages, and private lodging, with a door I can lock." "Agreed. And I do not mend personal clothing merely because I own needles." Elias looked down at the loose button hanging from his coat. "That condition feels pointed. It became necessary before we finished speaking." The corner of his mouth lifted. At 7 the next morning, Elias returned with a freight wagon carrying 20 rolls of damaged canvas. His foreman, Isaiah Boone, drove them to the Double R. Dry Creek Valley appeared exhausted beneath the white summer sky. The creek had shrunk to a brown ribbon, holding ponds were disappearing, and thirsty cattle crowded every remaining pool. The damaged canvas came from 5 ranches. Each section had been used to line a temporary water channel or reinforce a diversion gate. Clara unrolled the first piece across a work table. A jagged tear ran through its center. Beneath the dirt, she found 4 evenly spaced punctures and a fragment of red thread. She inspected a second section. The same hidden stitches appeared. By the 5th, every man in the equipment shed had stopped talking. "These did not wear out," Clara said. "Someone cut them, loosely stitched them closed, and positioned them where water pressure would finish the damage." Elias looked toward the dying creek. "Can you prove that?" Clara placed the red thread inside her brass thimble. "Give me a magnifying glass, clean paper, and the name of everyone who handled this canvas." A rider suddenly entered the ranch yard at a gallop. "Mr. Rourke," he shouted, "Bar 7's upper gate has failed. Their pond is emptying into the ravine." The young man opened his hand. A length of red thread lay across his palm. This time, it had not been hidden inside a seam. It had been tied openly to the broken gate. Clara looked at Elias. "The person destroying your water knows we found the stitches." Elias's face hardened. "Then your inspection just became a larger job." Clara slipped the brass thimble back onto her finger. "Bring me a new contract," she said. Elias returned with a new contract before the horses were saddled. It promised Clara $30 for 1 month of inspection and repair work. private use of the old school teacher's cottage, and full authority over every canvas project connected to the Double R. Clara read each sentence. You increase the wage, she said. The job increased. I decide how the repairs are made. Yes. Your men follow my instructions. One cowboy named Caleb Marsh looked displeased. Elias signed the document. They will. Clara added her name beneath his. Within minutes, Elias, Clara, Caleb, and Isaiah were traveling toward Bar 7. Because Clara had not ridden in 3 years, Elias drove her in a wagon rather than ordering her onto an unfamiliar horse. You expect danger? She asked. A guard was struck unconscious. I still need to inspect the gate. I know. That is why you are here. His answer mattered. He did not treat her skill as useful, only when the work was safe. At Bar 7, ranch owner Amos Carter led them toward the damaged diversion gate. Water poured through a 3-foot opening, draining the upper pond into a useless ravine. Workers tried blocking it with stones and sacks, but the current pushed everything aside. The injured guard, Walter Price, had regained consciousness. He remembered hearing someone approach from behind and smelling sweet clove tobacco before he was struck. He wore light-colored boots, Walter added. One had a crescent-shaped patch near the ankle. Clara examined his coat and found black waterproofing grease used around freight yards. At the broken gate, a length of red cord had been tied around an iron bolt. Under the magnifying glass, Clara discovered that it differed from the thread hidden inside the other canvases. This was left to mislead us, she said. Someone copied the color without knowing the exact material. She found a curved scratch on the gate's fastening. A packing hook made this. Isaiah's eyes narrowed. Freight workers use those. Who delivered the damaged canvas? Clara asked. Different suppliers, Elias said. But several shipments passed through Cyrus Bell's freight yard in Cheyenne. Amos Carter cursed. Bell works for Ambrose Kincaid. Clara looked at him. Kincaid controlled Western Range Development, a company buying drought-stricken ranches throughout the territory. He had already offered to purchase Bar 7 and 2 other properties surrounding Stone Narrows, the narrowest point along Dry Creek and the best location for a future reservoir. A railroad branch was being considered for the valley. Whoever controlled Stone Narrows could sell the railroad its water. The canvas failures are forcing owners to sell, Clara said, and Kincaid intends to buy before the railroad route becomes public, Elias replied. The Bar 7 pond continued falling. They could discuss motives later. First, they had to save the remaining water. Clara ordered heavy canvas brought from the barn. Using wagons as tables, she showed the ranch hands how to build an oval reinforcement patch with 2 rows of waxed stitching. Corners would concentrate pressure, but a rounded patch would spread it. Caleb held up a needle. You expect cowboys to sew? I expect thirsty cattle to appreciate the sacrifice. Even Elias worked beside her. His first knot twisted incorrectly. Clara cut it apart. Again. He obeyed without complaint. 2 hours later, 8 workers carried the reinforced canvas into the ravine. They secured it across the broken gate and slowly reopened the diversion. Water struck the patch. The canvas bowed, the seams tightened, and everyone waited. It held. A cheer rose from the muddy creek bed. No one had ever cheered Clara's sewing before. At sunrise, an elegant buggy approached the ranch. Ambrose Kincaid stepped down carrying a leather document case. I heard about your unfortunate water loss, he told Amos Carter. Western Range is prepared to increase its purchase offer. Amos pointed toward the refilling pond. We repaired the gate. Surprise flashed across Kincaid's face. His eyes moved to Clara. You must be the seamstress. Clara had arrived in the valley only the previous afternoon. How do you know who I am? She asked. Small communities carry news quickly. Kincaid handed Amos a purchase agreement and departed. Clara examined the document. It included the ranch, Stone Narrows access, and every future water claim. Then she saw the preparation date. The offer had been written and witnessed 6 hours before the Bar 7 gate was destroyed. The witness's signature belonged to Cyrus Bell. Kincaid did not come because someone told him the gate had failed, Clara said. Elias folded the contract carefully. "No," he replied. "He came because he expected it to." Sheriff Nathaniel Rollins recorded Amos Carter's complaint, but refused to arrest Kincaid. "A document prepared before the attack is suspicious," he said. "It does not prove who destroyed the gate." They needed a complete chain of evidence. Back at the Double R, Clara inspected all 20 canvas sections. 17 had been deliberately weakened. Most contained the same red thread and left-handed stitching pattern. The saboteur understood both heavy canvas and the valley's water system. Clara separated the natural tears from the false ones and recorded every puncture, knot, stain, and handling date. Then she summoned the ranch workers. Men and women gathered beneath the equipment shed, while Clara demonstrated her reinforced oval patch. Caleb Marsh reluctantly practiced beside Alma Boone and several neighboring ranch wives. His first stitches tangled. Alma examined them. "I have seen drunk spiders work straighter." By afternoon, even Caleb could produce a serviceable seam. The project spread throughout the valley. Ranch families brought damaged canvas to the Double R and returned home with reinforced aprons for their water gates. Clara marked each repair with a hidden pattern of black stitches known only to its owner. "If someone changes or replaces the canvas," she explained, "we will know." She also numbered every knife, packing hook and awl used by the crews. The saboteur had depended on scattered records and frightened ranchers. Clara turned their separate problems into one organized system. Visiting the remote gates required traveling faster than a wagon allowed. Elias brought her a calm bay mare named Bess and taught her to ride over uneven ground. "Loosen the reins," he said, when Clara gripped them too tightly. "I am controlling the horse." "You are explaining your fear to her mouth." Clara reluctantly relaxed her hands. Bess immediately steadied. Elias corrected her without touching or humiliating her. When the mare startled at a rabbit, he allowed Clara to regain control herself. "You could have taken my reins," she said afterward. "You did not need me to." Respect reached her more deeply than praise. During their inspection, Clara showed him how the black markings recorded every repair. Elias showed her how a failure upstream affected every ranch below it. "The creek connects all of you," she said. "That is why Kincaid wants everyone negotiating alone." At sunset, they returned to the Double R. Isaiah waited outside the stone storehouse with a ring of keys in his hand. "One canvas section is missing," he said. Clara dismounted. "Which one?" "The first Double R piece you inspected, the one carrying the clearest hidden stitches." Elias examined the storehouse door. Its lock was intact. 2 guards had watched the building, and no window had been broken. "How many keys open this door?" Clara asked. 3, Isaiah replied. "Elias carries one. I carry another. The third hangs inside the ranch office." They checked the office. The third key rested on its hook. Clara examined it beneath her magnifying lens. A thin layer of candle wax clung to its wooden tag. Someone had pressed the key into softened wax, taken the impression to a locksmith, and returned the original. "Who could enter this office?" she asked. "Nearly every Double R employee," Elias said. A copied key meant the thief had prepared in advance. Whoever had stolen the canvas worked close enough to observe the investigation and knew which evidence mattered most. Elias's anger sharpened. "I will search the bunkhouse and make every innocent man feel accused," Clara said. "One of them betrayed this ranch. Then give him another piece of evidence to steal." She prepared a worthless strip of naturally torn canvas, added several false red stitches, and sealed it inside a pine box. During supper, Elias announced loudly that the box contained proof connecting Cyrus Bell's freight yard to the sabotage. A rider would deliver it to Sheriff Rollins at dawn. That night, Isaiah concealed himself behind the hay bales. Elias waited inside the harness shed. Clara sat in the illuminated ranch office, appearing to finish her inventory. Near midnight, a shadow crossed the yard. A copied key entered the storehouse lock. The intruder emerged, carrying the pine box, and found Elias and Isaiah waiting. He dropped it without attempting to run. Owen Beckett, The young left-handed cowboy, who had shown unusual skill with a heavy needle, stood beneath the moonlight. Elias's face went still. "You ate at my table," he said. Owen lowered his head. "I know." Clara approached, carrying her sewing case. "Then tell us who taught you to make the false seams." Owen looked toward the dark road leading to Cheyenne. "Cyrus Bell," he whispered. "But if I testify, he'll hurt my sister." Owen confessed inside the ranch office while Isaiah recorded every word. 3 months earlier, Cyrus Bell had hired him to perform what he called canvas pressure tests. Bell cut the material, then instructed Owen to close each opening with loose red stitches. He said Western Range wanted to know how much strain the seams could carry. Owen explained. "I did 11 sections before I understood they were being installed at real water gates." "Why didn't you speak when the failures began?" Elias asked. "Bell threatened my sister in Denver. He said a woman living alone could suffer an accident." Fear explained Owen's silence, but it did not erase the damage. "Did you attack Walter Price?" Clara asked. "No." "Destroy the Bar 7 gate?" "No." "Bell never told me who performed the direct attacks." "Why steal the R canvas?" "He said I would be blamed for every failure unless I destroyed the evidence." Owen revealed that he had hidden the canvas beneath the floorboards of an abandoned sheep shed because he could not bring himself to burn it. Then he removed a folded bank draft from inside his shirt. Cyrus Bell had promised Owen $6 for canvas preparation and night work. The payment had been drawn from the account of Western Range Development. It connected Bell's operation to Kincaid's company, but not yet to Kincaid himself. "You will repeat this confession to Sheriff Rollins," Elias said. "You will also answer for the theft." Owen nodded. "Yes, sir." After Isaiah escorted him away, Elias remained in the empty office. "I wanted to strike him," he admitted. "But you didn't. He helped men destroy the valley." He also gave us the first evidence connecting Bell to Western Range. Elias looked at Clara. "You understand his fear." "My husband Daniel worked in a freight warehouse. When it caught fire, his employer ordered him back inside to save the company ledgers. Daniel believed loyalty would protect us." "What happened?" "He saved the records and died 11 days later. The company paid one doctor's bill, denied responsibility, and sent me a letter expressing its gratitude." Elias understood then why she distrusted gifts, favors, and unwritten obligations. "You thought my blanket would become another debt. I did not know you well enough to believe otherwise. And now?" Clara considered him. "Now I believe you are learning to offer kindness without using it as a rope." The answer affected him more than she expected. "My younger brother left the R after I tried to control every decision he made," Elias said. 2 years later, he died during a winter cattle drive. I still wonder whether he would have remained safely here if I had treated him differently. You cannot protect people by taking away every choice. I know that now. Outside, Isaiah's men recovered the stolen canvas from the sheep shed. Its hidden stitches remained intact. Clara touched Elias's sleeve. "You allowed me to come to Bar 7, after arguing. You listened eventually. I am improving slowly." The following morning, they transported Owen, the bank draft, and the recovered canvas to Cheyenne. Sheriff Rollins accepted Owen's confession and obtained permission to search Cyrus Bell's freight yard. When they arrived, Bell had already escaped on a westbound train, carrying a leather case and a green metal lockbox. His office had been searched and partially burned. Clara found a spool of red thread matching the genuine fragment hidden inside her brass thimble. A packing hook beneath Bell's desk carried fresh canvas fibers. Near the back door, one boot print showed a crescent-shaped repair, identical to Walter Price's description. The freight ledger was missing 6 pages. Clara examined the first remaining sheet. Faint depressions showed that Bell's pencil had pressed through the removed pages. She shaded the paper lightly with graphite. Hidden writing appeared. Western Range, canvas preparation, 12 blasting caps, 6 powder crates. Stone Narrows channel clearing, June 22nd, midnight. Elias looked at the date. They had 2 days. Could blasting Stone Narrows divert the creek? Clara asked. Yes. It would drain the valley before anyone could build a barrier. Sheriff Rollins folded the recovered page. We can arrest Bell, but none of this proves Kincaid personally ordered the attack. A voice came from the freight yard entrance. Then I trust you will stop confusing my company with one dishonest contractor. Ambrose Kincaid stood beside his attorney. His expression remained calm, but his left hand tightened when he saw the writing Clara had recovered. He had expected the missing pages to leave no evidence. Clara knew then that they were close to the truth. Kincaid knew it too. Kincaid denied authorizing sabotage. Cyrus Bell handled freight for many clients, he said. If he acted illegally, Western Range is another victim. Sheriff Rollins could search company records, but without Bell or written orders, he could not arrest Kincaid. Clara challenged him directly. Did you authorize 6 crates of blasting powder for Stone Narrows? No. Then you will not object to guards being placed there. Kincaid's smile cooled. Place as many as you wish. As he left, his gaze lingered on Clara's worn dress and sewing case. Men who build fortunes are rarely defeated by thread, Mrs. Whitlock. Clara touched the brass thimble around her wrist. Then it should not frighten you. Rollins sent deputies to protect Stone Narrows and telegraph stations west of Cheyenne with Cyrus Bell's description. Owen remained in custody as both an accomplice and a witness. Elias and Clara began riding back to the Double R that afternoon. A dust storm caught them halfway across the plains. They sheltered with their horses inside an abandoned stage shack. The temperature fell as darkness came. Elias removed the same gray blanket Clara had rejected at the depot and placed it between them, not around her shoulders, not in her hands, between them, where either could use it. Clara covered her knees with one half. Elias wrapped the other around his shoulders. This time, the blanket felt shared rather than owed. She noticed a missing button on his coat. Give that to me. Personal clothing was excluded from our contract. This is an emergency repair. You appear to have lost a fight with Wyoming. The territory won. Instead of mending it herself, Clara handed him the needle and taught him to sew the button back. His stitches were crooked but secure. It will hold, he said. It may tear somewhere else, but not where you worked. They recognized the words Clara had used while repairing the glove at the station. Elias looked toward the fire. Your contract ends in 26 days. What will you do afterward? Return to Cheyenne. Perhaps open a repair shop. You could remain at the Double R. As your employee? If you choose. Clara studied him. I have learned not to build a future while trapped inside a storm. That is reasonable. You sound disappointed. I am learning that disappointment does not grant authority. She smiled despite herself. For the first time, Elias spoke about his younger brother. Years earlier, he had attempted to control the young man's work, money, and marriage plans. His brother left the Double R and later died during a winter cattle drive. I believed making decisions for him was protection, Elias said. Clara placed another stick on the fire. Protection without choice becomes a cage. I know. Outside, the wind drove dust against the canvas Clara had fastened across the broken window. The patch trembled but held. Hoofbeats suddenly approached. Elias reached for his revolver. A young deputy staggered through the door, his face covered with dust. We reached Stone Narrows, he gasped. The blasting powder wasn't there. Elias stood. Where did Bell take it? The deputy spread a survey map on the floor. Fresh wagon tracks had turned north before reaching Stone Narrows. They led toward the Double R's main timber reservoir. That structure held enough water to supply nearly the entire northern valley. If Bell destroys the central spillway, Elias said, the water will tear through the lower ranches before draining into the plains. The storm had begun weakening, but traveling at night remained dangerous. Clara folded the shared blanket. We ride now. Elias looked at her. You understand what may be waiting there? Yes. I could send you to the ranch house and lose the person who knows how Bell conceals damage in canvas and cord. Concern moved across his face. Clara waited for it to become an order. It did not. If shooting begins, stay behind me, he said. If we find explosives, I follow the deputy. Agreed. They reached the reservoir shortly before dawn. One guard lay unconscious beside the west post. Another had disappeared. The smell of sulfur drifted from beneath the spillway. A black fuse was already burning. The deputy cut it with only a few minutes remaining. Behind the central supports, they discovered 5 powder crates and 4 timbers nearly sawed through. The 6th crate was missing. Even without an explosion, water pressure could break the weakened gate within hours. "We need to lower the reservoir," Elias said. A rifle shot sounded from the northern ridge. Then came the rattle of a wagon, moving quickly through darkness. Bell had not abandoned the 6th powder crate. He was taking it toward the upstream diversion gate, the only structure capable of safely lowering the water. Elias fired 6 warning shots, the double R signal for immediate danger. Ranchers began arriving within the hour. Families from Bar 7, Mercy Creek, Circle Pine, and the Harlan property brought wagons, timber, ropes, tools, and every worker they could spare. No one asked which ranch owned the reservoir. They finally understood that the same creek connected them all. Elias explained that the central supports might fail before the reservoir could be lowered. Replacing the timbers under pressure was impossible. Clara spread the reservoir plans across a wagon bed. "We cannot repair the wood in time," she said, "but we can distribute the pressure." Using overlapping canvas panels and reinforced webbing, they could create an enormous sling across the downstream face of the spillway. Anchor ropes secured to both banks might keep the weakened gate together until Elias opened the upstream diversion. "How large?" Isaiah asked. 60 feet wide and 30 feet deep. "We do not own one piece of canvas that large. We make one." The valley became an outdoor workshop. Ranch women stitched beside cowboys. Others cut panels, punched holes, waxed cord, and drove anchor posts into the banks. Clara inspected every seam. Even Caleb now corrected workers who pulled their stitches too tightly. Elias prepared to ride north with 6 men. Clara approached him. "I'm coming." "No." He paused and corrected himself. "I need you here. No one else can supervise the sling." It was not an attempt to control her. It was respect for the skill only she possessed. "Take Caleb," she said. "Open the diversion and bring the water down." Elias mounted. "Hold the spillway together." Clara pulled the brass thimble onto her finger. "Bring me less water to hold." By nightfall, 24 workers carried the completed sling toward the reservoir. They lowered it across the damaged spillway and tightened the anchor ropes. The first central timber cracked. Water struck the canvas hard enough to knock men from their feet. The sling bowed, but its overlapping seams distributed the force toward both banks. It held. A signal fire appeared on the northern ridge. Elias had reached the diversion gate. Then Caleb returned alone, blood running down one side of his face. "Bell ambushed us," he said. "Mr. Rourke drove him away, but they found the 6th powder crate beside the diversion channel." "Is Elias hurt?" "No, but Bell already placed the charges." A distant explosion shook the valley. Orange light flashed above the northern ridge. The blast collapsed part of the diversion channel, sending its water back toward the main reservoir. A dark surge traveled across the basin. "Clear the lower platform," Isaiah shouted. The wave struck. One of Clara's central seams ripped open. Water forced through the tear and began separating the canvas panel from the reinforcement web. Clara selected 3 narrow strips. "I can bridge the tear." Alma caught her arm. "Not from up here." "No. You are not climbing down there alone." They tied safety ropes around their waists and descended the maintenance ladder. Water sprayed through the opening, with enough force to sting. Clara did not attempt to pull the torn edges together. She crossed reinforced strips over the rupture and connected them to stronger webbing farther away, carrying the pressure beyond the damaged seam. Her needle slipped against the soaked canvas. The brass thimble struck its point and split along one side. Clara closed her hand around it and continued working. Above them, the eastern anchor post began pulling free. Before the sling could twist apart, hoofbeats sounded from the northern trail. Elias returned with Cyrus Bell bound between 2 riders. A green metal lockbox had been secured behind his saddle. Elias organized horse teams to support the failing anchor rope. The post stopped moving. He looked down and saw Clara working beneath the spillway. "What is she doing there?" Alma shouted from the platform. "Saving your reservoir. Be useful." Clara completed the crossed reinforcement strips. The tears stopped spreading, but the reservoir continued rising. "North Wash is blocked," Elias told her. "We cannot lower the water through the diversion." "How long does the sling need to hold?" "Long enough to open the eastern saddlebank." Clara understood the cost. Breaching that bank would flood 1,200 acres of the Double R's finest hay meadow, destroy buildings, and force Elias to sell part of his herd before winter. "Is there another safe route?" she asked. "No." "Then why are you hesitating?" "Because the plan depends on your canvas holding while we place the charges." Clara pressed one hand against the trembling reinforcement web. "You have 30 minutes. Elias looked across East Meadow, the land he had spent 15 years improving. Then he turned toward the families gathered above the flood path. "Move every animal and person to high ground," he ordered. "We are sacrificing the meadow." Cyrus Bell laughed from beneath guard. "Kincaid will buy whatever remains of your empire." Elias did not look at him. "Land can be rebuilt," he said. "Dead families cannot." Riders swept across East Meadow, driving cattle and horses toward higher ground. Families loaded children, tools, and food into wagons. Workers cut fences so frightened animals would not become trapped when the water arrived. Deputy Reed placed 2 recovered powder crates against the lowest section of the eastern bank. A controlled breach there would release the reservoir across open pasture rather than through the central spillway. Clara remained on the lower maintenance platform with Alma. The tear in the canvas sling began widening again. They crossed a third reinforcement strip over the opening and connected it to the stronger webbing beyond the damaged seam. Water struck Clara's hands. The split brass thimble pinched her finger each time she forced the needle through the soaked material. Above them, Isaiah called the remaining time. 20 minutes. Elias supervised the evacuation before riding toward the eastern bank. He could have sent another man to inspect the flood path, but the choice to sacrifice his land made him responsible for ensuring no one remained upon it. Cyrus Bell watched beneath guard. "You are destroying the Double R for people who will forget by winter," he shouted. Elias turned toward him. "You destroyed their water for a man who has already forgotten you." The words reached Bell. He looked toward the southern road, where Ambrose Kincaid's buggy had appeared in the distance. Kincaid did not approach his captured contractor. He simply watched to see whether the reservoir would fall. Bell's anger broke his caution. "Kincaid promised I would own the freight contracts after he bought Stone Narrows." A deputy stepped closer. "You just named him." Bell's face paled. Clara remembered the green lockbox tied behind Elias's saddle. "Search his boots," she called. The ranch hands removed Bell's left boot. Beneath its lining, they found a small key wrapped in red thread. The key opened the lockbox. Inside were payment records, maps of every sabotaged gate, and letters carrying Kincaid's signature. The first promised Bell $800 after the reservoir failed. Another instructed him to renew every land offer before outside assistance reached the valley. They finally possessed proof linking Kincaid directly to the conspiracy. 10 minutes, Isaiah shouted. A main anchor rope snapped. The enormous sling twisted across the spillway. Clara caught Alma before the older woman fell from the platform. Above them, workers seized the loose rope while Elias organized 2 horse teams to carry its load. "Match the pressure," he called. "Do not pull against the canvas." The horses stepped backward. The sling straightened. Clara drove the final needle through the reinforced web and tied the emergency cord. Her thimble split farther, but the new seam held. A second timber cracked behind them. "Pull us out." Workers hauled their safety ropes. Alma reached the walkway first. Clara climbed as the lower platform tilted beneath her boots. Elias galloped back from East Meadow. "Clear the spillway." Everyone ran for high ground. Deputy Reed lit the measured fuse and mounted his horse. Clara reached the ridge just as the powder exploded. Earth, stone, and smoke rose from the eastern bank. For one terrible moment, the reservoir remained still. Then water found the new opening. A broad wall poured into East Meadow, ripping through fences, lifting a storage barn from its foundation, and drowning 1,200 acres of valuable hay. The reservoir level began falling. At the central spillway, Clara's canvas sling continued carrying the damaged timbers. As the pressure eased, the stretched ropes softened from screams into groans. The gate remained standing. Dry Creek continued flowing south. The valley still possessed water. At dawn, Clara stood above the flooded meadow wrapped in the gray blanket she had once refused. Alma had placed it around her shoulders. Elias approached after Sheriff Rollins took Belle into custody. "You held the spillway," he said. "We held it. You saved the valley. You sacrificed your finest land." He looked at the families gathering safely beside the surviving reservoir. "Land is only worth protecting when you remember what it is for." Clara opened her hand and showed him the broken brass thimble. Elias examined it carefully. "This can be repaired." She looked toward the stained canvas still stretched across the spillway. It was torn, patched, and exhausted, but it had performed the work asked of it. "Yes," Clara said. "Some things can." Sheriff Rollins opened the first letter from Belle's lockbox. Kincaid's signature appeared beneath a detailed order to destroy the reservoir and purchase the desperate ranches afterward. Across the valley, Kincaid's buggy finally turned around. This time, deputies were already riding after him. Sheriff Rollins intercepted Kincaid before he reached Cheyenne. The green lockbox contained more than enough evidence to detain him. Signed instructions to Cyrus Bell, maps of every damaged water gate, company payments for blasting powder, and purchase offers prepared before each act of sabotage. Still, Kincaid refused responsibility. "Bell acted without my authority," he claimed. "Those letters are forged." Clara laid the Bar 7 contract beside the papers from the lockbox. Each document carried Kincaid's signature and had been produced by the same typewriter. The lowercase e sat slightly high, and every capital W contained an identical broken stroke. Then Clara removed the genuine red thread from inside her damaged brass thimble. It matched the spool found in Belle's freight yard, the same color, twist, and black waterproofing wax. Walter Price identified Belle's repaired boot and clove tobacco. Owen described creating the loose seams at Belle's direction. Belle's freight ledger connected Western Range money to canvas preparation and explosives. No single clue depended on coincidence. Each supported another. At the territorial hearing, Cyrus Bell finally testified against Kincaid after realizing his employer intended to abandon him. The railroad engineer confirmed the motive. Western Range would receive a valuable water contract only after gaining lawful control of Stone Narrows. Kincaid had attempted to destroy the valley's water, purchase the desperate ranches cheaply, and then profit by returning access to the creek he had stolen. Both men were held for trial. Western Range's land purchases and water claims were suspended. Owen also faced judgment. He admitted weakening the canvas and stealing evidence, though Bell's threats against his sister explained why he had remained silent. The court sentenced him to restitution work and a short term in custody. Clara did not ask that his consequences disappear. Mercy did not require pretending no harm had occurred. Back in Dry Creek Valley, families worked together to repair the reservoir. Bar 7 supplied timber. Mercy Creek provided stone wagons. The Harlans brought horses and food. Elias offered wages, but Amos Carter refused. "You saved our pond," Carter said. "Now let us help rebuild yours." Clara created a repair ledger recording every hour. Tool, wagon, and piece of timber contributed. No family would owe an unnamed favor that someone could manipulate later. "The valley needs more than repairs," she told the gathered owners. "It needs a system that cannot be controlled by one frightened rancher or one powerful company." They formed the Dry Creek Water Cooperative. Each family retained ownership of its land and water rights. Reservoir expenses would be shared, and no member could privately sell control of the creek. Despite owning most of the watershed, Elias accepted the same voting power as the smallest ranch. The railroad negotiated with the cooperative instead of one land company. Its water access payments provided enough money to rebuild the reservoir, compensate damaged ranches, and restore part of East Meadow. Elias permanently surrendered 300 flooded acres as an emergency spill channel. "You are giving away valuable land," Clara said. "I am giving the reservoir somewhere safe to fail." 3 weeks later, Clara completed the final canvas repair required by her contract. Her $30 lay on the cottage table. It was enough to rent a small Cheyenne room and purchase a used sewing machine. She packed her carpet bag. At sunset, Elias knocked on the cottage door. He carried 2 documents and a small wooden box. The first document was a 3-year maintenance agreement between the cooperative and a new business named Whitlock Canvas and Field Repair. Clara would own the company, control its designs, set its schedule, and hire its workers. The second authorized an advance for a sewing machine and use of the abandoned schoolhouse near Stone Narrows. The cost would be deducted gradually from her earnings. It was not charity. It was honest work with clear terms. Clara looked at Elias. "You arranged this?" "I proposed the maintenance contract." The cooperative voted. Carter lowered the price. Alma raised it again. Clara almost laughed. Then she opened the wooden box. Inside lay her brass thimble, repaired with a narrow silver band. Its dents and scratches remained visible. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing." The repair purchases no work, gratitude, or future. If that makes it unacceptable, leave it here. At the Cheyenne depot, Clara had refused his blanket because she feared the debt hidden inside kindness. Now, Elias had offered a gift and clearly removed every obligation from it. She placed the thimble on her finger. "I accept." Relief crossed his face. Clara looked toward her packed carpet bag, then back at the business contract. For the first time in years, staying somewhere did not mean surrendering her independence. It meant choosing where to build it. Clara signed the cooperative contract after revising 3 clauses and increasing the minimum monthly payment. Elias watched her place the final period beside her name. "Amos Carter said you would negotiate until the paper surrendered." Carter confuses accuracy with cruelty. "I made the same mistake once." The abandoned schoolhouse became Clara's workshop. Its roof leaked, 2 windows were broken, and mice occupied the supply cupboard, but every key belonged to her. She hired Lena Carter and Margaret Beckett as her first assistants. Women who had once repaired canvas only for their families now received proper wages for work that protected the entire valley. Orders soon arrived for wagon covers, reservoir liners, grain sacks, and reinforced water aprons. Clara marked each completed piece with 3 hidden black stitches. Ranchers began requesting the Whitlock mark because it meant the work had been measured and made to hold. Elias visited often, but never entered the workshop without knocking. Sometimes he brought damaged ranch equipment. Sometimes he brought business questions. Occasionally he brought nothing and attempted to pretend he had come by accident. One evening, Clara found him standing beneath the cottonwoods outside her cottage. "You have no canvas with you," she said. "I am aware." "No torn coat?" "The button remains attached." "Then why are you here?" Elias removed his hat. "I want you to stay in Dry Creek." "I already signed the 3-year contract." "I am not speaking to the owner of Whitlock Canvas." Clara waited. "I want you here because the days have become more honest with you in them," he said. "But I will not attach that wish to your work, wages, or home. If you decide to leave, every contract remains valid." He did not ask her to belong to him. He asked whether there might be room for him inside the future she chose. Clara crossed the small distance between them and rested her hand against his chest, directly over the crooked button he had sewn during the dust storm. "There might be room," she said. Elias covered her hand with his. "Clara." It was the first time he had spoken her given name. "Elias." He bent slowly enough for her to refuse. She did not. Their kiss was gentle and brief, carrying no promise they had not already earned through shared labor, trust, and sacrifice. During the winter, Elias courted her with great seriousness and limited talent. He brought flowers once, but Bess ate half of them before Clara reached the stable. He invited her to dinner and discussed reservoir timber prices for 20 minutes because nervousness had stolen every other subject. Clara began understanding that independence did not require refusing every kindness. Elias began understanding that protection did not require controlling every choice. In February, he asked her to ride with him to the ridge above East Meadow. Snow covered the flood scars. Below them, Dry Creek moved beneath a thin layer of ice. Elias handed Clara a written agreement declaring that after marriage, she would retain ownership of her company, earnings, designs, and property. No debt, land purchase, or decision affecting both households could be made without both signatures. Clara read it twice. You wrote a proposal as a business contract. I believe the audience would appreciate clarity. And where is the actual proposal? Elias looked more uncertain than he had while confronting armed saboteurs. I love you because you do not become smaller beside me. I want a life in which neither of us must surrender useful work, honest grief, or the right to speak plainly. Will you marry me? Clara looked toward the reservoir they had saved. Yes, subject to one revision. His expression tightened. What revision? The double R receives no discount from Whitlock Canvas, merely because I marry its owner. Elias laughed and drew her close. Agreed. They married in May beside the repaired schoolhouse. Clara wore a cream dress she had made herself, and the silver-banded thimble hung from her wrist. She did not abandon Daniel's memory. Elias never asked her to. A new love did not need to erase the life that had come before it. Marriage also did not close Clara's workshop. The sign above its entrance continued to read, Whitlock Canvas and Field Repair. Her name, her work, her choice. Beside it, Dry Creek flowed steadily toward every ranch in the valley. The first anniversary of the reservoir breach arrived beneath a sky heavy with rain. All morning, clouds rolled over Dry Creek Valley, darkening the fields and turning the distant mountains blue-black. By noon, water poured down the slopes in silver sheets. Years earlier, such a storm would have sent every rancher running for higher ground. This time, the cooperative opened the diversion gates together. The eastern spill channel carried the flood safely across the land Elias had surrendered, then guided it back toward the creek below the settlement. Not one house was lost. From the porch of Whitlock Canvas and Field Repair, Clara watched the water rush past the cottonwoods. Beside her, Elias held their baby daughter beneath his coat. Your mother designed the gate covers, he told the sleeping child. Your father donated the land, Clara added. Elias looked at her. Sold it to the cooperative for $1, after I made you put it in writing. That part will be carved on my gravestone. Clara laughed, and the sound carried through the open workshop door. Inside, 8 employees worked beneath hanging lamps. Their orders came from ranches, mines, freight companies, and 3 neighboring counties. Every finished canvas bore 3 small black stitches, the Whitlock mark, proof that the work had been inspected by someone whose name stood behind it. Margaret Beckett managed the account books. Her brother Owen, after completing his sentence and repaying every dollar he had taken, returned to ask Clara for work. She had not forgiven him quickly. Instead, she offered him the same thing Elias once offered her, a written contract, honest wages, and a chance to prove himself through labor. 5 years later, Owen became the company's most trusted field supervisor. Ambrose Kincaid and Cyrus Bell were convicted of conspiracy, attempted destruction of property, and fraud. Western Range Development collapsed beneath lawsuits from the ranchers it had tried to ruin. The railroad still came through Wyoming, but it purchased its water from the cooperative at a fair price. Dry Creek prospered because no single powerful man controlled the valley's survival. Not even Elias Rourke. He remained one of Wyoming's largest cattlemen, though people noticed a change in the cattle king. He listened before issuing orders. He offered choices where once he would have offered protection. On the ridge above the double R, he built a small stone marker for his younger brother. The inscription did not pretend Elias had been blameless. Clara had helped him write it. Their marriage was neither quiet nor perfect. They disagreed over grazing leases, workshop expansions, and whether their daughter should be allowed to climb the windmill before turning 10. Yet every important decision was made at the same oak table, with 2 voices and 2 signatures. In time, they had 3 children. All learned to ride. All learned to sew. Decades passed. The schoolhouse workshop grew into a brick factory beside the railroad. Clara's reinforced water liners were used throughout the territory. During floods, ranchers trusted the Whitlock mark. During droughts, they remembered the widow whose stitches had once held an entire reservoir together. Clara never allowed anyone to call her success a gift from Elias, and Elias never tried. "The best thing I gave her," he would say, "was work worthy of her skill." Clara always corrected him. "The best thing you gave me was a contract I could refuse." When Elias died at 78, Clara placed his first crookedly sewn button in the pocket of his burial coat. She lived another 11 years, directing the company from a chair beside the workshop window. On her final morning, her eldest granddaughter sat beside her, preparing to inspect a new shipment of canvas. Clara removed the old brass thimble from her finger. Its silver band was worn smooth, but the crack beneath it remained visible. "My mother gave me this when I had nothing," Clara said. "Your grandfather repaired it when I thought broken things could never be trusted again." She pressed it into the young woman's palm. "Remember, kindness without choice is only another kind of cage. But honest work, freely chosen, can save more than the person doing it." Outside, Dry Creek moved steadily through the valley. The water passed the ranches, the workshop, and the eastern spill channel where wildflowers now grew over the drowned foundations of an old barn. It carried no memory of the men who had tried to own it, but the valley remembered the seamstress who had saved it.